Talked a lot about the nitty-gritty plumbing of Web3. We're going to talk about one of the killer areas of application developments. In my opinion, the digital gaming frontier. I think the frontier is here and now. We talk about the power of exit in crypto a lot, but there's no more land to go to. There's nowhere to escape. There's nowhere to run in the physical realm. You can do that on the internet. You can do it in the virtual realm. And the issue for a long time has been, how do you ensure digital scarcity? These panelists are working on that. They've got some exciting applications that we're going to talk about. Esteban Ordano from Decentraland, Marguerite from Blockade Games, and Mickey Meyer from Dapper Labs. Dan Elitzer, my friend that I mentioned before, is going to be kicking off and coordinating this discussion. He is from IDEO Collab Ventures, where they are all about how to design Web3 and the future of crypto. So Dan, take it away, and thank you to our panelists for joining.
Hey all, thanks for joining and for having us here. Ryan, thanks for handing it over. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. We've got some real expert speakers who've both been in this space for a while, have created some of the leading experiences that are really driving forward on the edges of crypto adoption and of gaming and of digital experiences. And so while I've done a fair amount in this space, and IDEO Collab Ventures, we're pretty active in investing, the real experts are these panelists, and so we're going to be hearing from them first. And so Marguerite, do you want to start off with just a quick intro for yourself and for Blockade, so everyone can hear what you guys do if they're not already familiar?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Marguerite from Blockade. So we've been focusing on definitely blockchain experiences, but I've been in this space since 2014. I did some creative work, puzzles, just playing around with what is the creative potential of cryptocurrency. And over the years, picked up lots of friends. It's nice to see you all. And I guess so. Neon District is our biggest title that most people would be familiar with. It's a cyberpunk RPG. We really wanted to focus on the free-to-play aspect of blockchain gaming because I don't know, like today's space, the games, it's just such a barrier to entry if you have to already own cryptocurrency. So that was one of the problems we were trying to solve. And then initially, and then we also wanted to create the ability to craft tokens, compose assets, just everything you can do with NFTs. It's a whole different space. There's a lot of potential. So we're definitely playing.
Awesome. Esteban, you want to go next?
Sure. Great to see you all. Dan, long time. Marguerite, Nikki.
Very long time.
I started into this space with Decentraland in Ethereum, a virtual world owned by its users. I see it as a huge experiment in public goods governance. Like all games in Ethereum, well, it's a great way to push forward the technology, make it more useful for a broader range of people. I think that we all really feel the pain of needing faster and cheaper transactions and all the things that the guys were talking about in the previous sections. And we're exploring those compromises on technology and, or maybe sometimes on security, that it takes, whatever it takes to make this widely useful and accessible for everybody. That's pretty much why I keep pushing forward in this space.
Awesome, thanks as well. And Mickey.
How's it going? Mickey Maher, I'm VP of Partnerships at Dapper Labs. Dapper Labs is famously the creator of CryptoKitties. Since CryptoKitties, we've been doing quite a bit of things, but most notably, we've been building our own layer 1 proof of stake blockchain called Flow. Flow launches this week, and Flow is branded and going to be the blockchain for gaming and entertainment experiences for the mass market. So we're excited to bring that to the market, get blockchain game developers building on it, as well as some more traditional game developers that aren't currently in the blockchain space. So looking forward to that.
Very cool. And just for quick context here, I mean, for those of you who may not be familiar with all of these, the way that I think about each of these different teams and where they kind of fit into the history as I think about the development of the game space is obviously CryptoKitties was kind of the first breakout application where we saw something that was not first and foremost a financial application. That was more of a friendly user-friendly experience for blockchain gaming. That was CryptoKitties. That really kind of kicked off a lot of activity in the space. I remember, Esteban, when you and some of your team were with us in the Idea Studio, and we sat down with the 0x team and we helped to talk about some updates to make to the 721 standard, which we then worked on with some of the Dapper Labs folks and others at Ethereum Denver a few years back. And Marguerite, the first time I saw Neon District, right, that was like, wow, this is a super cool cyberpunk game that's just taking this to a whole nother level. So it's thrilling to have such pioneers together to talk about what I think really could be a big future for gaming. And so, first I'd like to just acknowledge that we're having this conversation at a really crazy time in the world, and it's a real privilege that we're able to talk about games in the future here. But what I'd like to know is just from you guys, what are you seeing in terms of usage of your platforms at this time? Have people been turning to it more? Have they been using it in different ways when their experiences in the physical world have been limited? What's going on?
I'll just jump in. So at Blockade, we actually shipped recently something called MetaBoss. It's a idle MMO, team-based idle MMO. What it does is it takes everybody's assets. So in this game, we're actually using CryptoKitties and we're some Decentraland assets. In the game, if you're just an NFT holder, it reads your wallet. And then it will give you basically stats based on the NFTs you own. And you can pick different teams and then you go to battle over a week-long tournament. So I guess I think this time has really given a lot of extra creativity for people that are hanging out online, having, our conversations. And so it was neat to see there's a few different game companies actually that worked on that project. And these dev cycles that we're going through, it's a very community driven based on feedback. Decentraland was awesome. They participated with us this last week. So yeah, no, I think this space has brought us together. A lot of us were already online nomads anyway.
Yeah,
True. We probably have easier times in the industry than most. Esteban, sorry.
Yeah, I would say. Oh, go ahead, Esteban.
No, you go ahead because we've got a pretty noisy signal because we launched it just before this whole pandemic started, and so it's hard for us to separate what's noise or what's true natural growth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. There's a lot of noise, I would say, with CryptoKitties too. So I'm not going to necessarily speak to that. And then Flow is just going live this week, so there's no data there, let's say. But I've come from the gaming space. Spent 12, 13 years in the gaming space, and I think in general, when I go back and I talk to some of my mobile gaming, the old world I used to be in, their users, monthly active users, revenue, all of the key metrics are way, way, way up. And I would say that that's probably holding true across all gaming and probably all digital products and social media at this point. So yeah, I think when all of this stuff brings us indoors and we're kind of there's a lot of people unemployed and out of work, I think they turn to entertainment experiences, specifically games, in these times. And I think the data across different gaming platforms and in different gaming industries is showing that.
Great. And so, Mickey, given your background in traditional gaming too, I'm curious, where do you see the gaming space headed over the next decade? Like, what does stuff look like a decade from now in your minds? And what role do some of these blockchains and open systems play in that? And then what I would challenge is for our other speakers to jump in if you hear something that you're like, yes, absolutely, our vision is aligned with this, great. But I'm also curious where your visions may differ, right? Because none of us know for sure where we're going to end up. But let's go that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, and if I did, I'd be a billionaire 10 years from now. But I'll give it a shot. So some of the analogies I like to use go back towards, to the beginning when I started in this space. So I started in this space in 2007 when Facebook just opened their platform to games. And what you saw a lot of the incumbent gaming studios or the large traditional gaming studios kind of scoff at that platform and say, hey, like, yeah, whatever, it's not real gaming, or, there's nothing there. And then all these upstarts, creative people, looked at the social graph, looked at the virality at it, and started creating projects on it. And those projects led to games, and games led to Zynga, Playfish, Playdom, etc. So it wasn't, and then the incumbents had to go and buy those companies or start late and became expensive. So you saw that it's kind of minimal. Facebook had its time for a few years. Few billion-dollar game companies came out of that, but where you really saw it then was in mobile. So it's the same thing. iPhone gaming wasn't built by Activision, wasn't built by EA. It was built by Rovio, King, Supercell, etc. And the AAA or incumbent game companies didn't come in until the model was proven and all these upstarts proved that you could make money and what types of games could be built on it. And then VR was next, and now it's blockchain. So it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be creative, small, from the ground up studios that understand the technology, can build the type of games that leverages this technology well, proves it to the corporations, proves it to the incumbent game studios, and then there'll be late followers like they have been on every other platform for the last 15 years plus, probably even before that. So what's going to happen is, the next versions of CryptoKitties, the Marguerites of the world, any of the indie game developers listening to this panel are probably going to be the ones that are pioneers on this platform and build the first billion-dollar businesses. And then you'll start seeing EA, Activision, and all these newly minted billionaire game companies, come in later. That's just, that's my opinion.
I love it. So, I mean, Marguerite, as one of these like up and coming game studios, right, who's trying to take on the incumbents, or provide a platform for them in some cases, right? So what is the real hook that you think will drive forward games that are built on Blockade, that differentiate them from what's being done today?
There's two different strategies that we have. We have the strategy where we're focusing on the user, the blockchain user, people that are already familiar, and we're thinking about what's cool about blockchain, like where's the value add with playing with the blockchain. And then there's the other experience, which is how do we hide all the blockchain so you don't even know, and we take those really cool parts and now it's got the backend order that's baked in and the user experience is really smooth. So in exploring both of those strategies, I guess, oh, sorry, I had totally spaced on what your original question was, but what is this? So I guess, yeah, what was it?
Yeah, so basically, what is it that's going to differentiate these like games on Blockade? How is it going to be different and better, right? We saw mobile was more accessible, more user friendly. Didn't have to be a hardcore gamer in the same way. There were social elements. Yep. So what is it that's going to drive blockchain related games forward?
There's a few things that get the users really excited. One is having a little more control over their assets, but it's also the potential of, okay, own this. What does that mean? So playing around with that experience, now you've just created the collectible market has blended with the gaming market, which is gigantic. And now you can speculate on things like land, virtual land, and which we're seeing. Actually, I think that's the biggest thing people are speculating on right now. But once we start actually building and creating these experiences where it's not just speculation anymore, that's where I think the communities will really drive. You see this in the cryptocurrency space with just fungible tokens, how the community rallies around the different projects. In the gaming space, it's similar. So once we can bridge those different opportunities for the community to directly contribute to the things that they own and the gaming experience and the platforms that people are building, that's probably a 5-year window before we really see that snowball. yeah. So I guess that's the difference between it's not just the developers driving the ship anymore. The community is directly building what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say the lowest hanging fruit, what a lot of people talk about when they talk about blockchain gaming, is the true ownership aspect, but it goes way beyond that. Like a big talking point nowadays in the world is the wealth gap, etc. I see blockchain gaming experiences as an opportunity to open up a whole new economy, because what you really are doing is a gamer and a community member is participating in an economy, and the developers that build out their economies that awards engagement, allows their users or the community that are spending a lot of time there to actually earn a living or to be able to have equity in what they're doing. I think it's important. I think it opens up an opportunity for a younger generation to participate in a new digital economy. And secondly, I referenced like Facebook and mobile previously, and Facebook opened their API, opened their platform, people build businesses on it, and then they pulled out the rug. Apple never even gave the semblance that there was any rug to pull out. They're just a closed platform. What's cool about building a blockchain is it's completely open. So if there's an experience that's built leveraging smart contracts, the composability aspect of it allows for the community or other developers to come in and build on those as open APIs permissionlessly, which is important. So game developers have been burned time and time again by these closed platforms. And blockchain, once developers and game developers understand it a bit better, they'll understand that it's like an open API, but it's permissionless, and they can be confident they can build a business there and maintain that business there without changes being made by a central authority.
Yeah. Can I actually add? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I think I've got like one narrative that I think in 5 to 10 years from now it's going to be like super widespread, which is that users will start to shift towards saying, or like getting slightly outraged that what happens if my items are in your database? How come I can't take them out to the Ethereum blockchain, or I can trade them on OpenSea? And I think that's a trend. It's already starting about this trend against platforms having too much control, and I think it's going to continue towards that user acceptance and that user control and that emotional relationship to the items. Sorry, Margaret, I don't know if this is like...
I just wanted to, well, with Decentraland has your new DAO, and yeah, I would love to hear about that, but I'm excited about DAOs in this space because so getting fundraising for independent developers, application developers, and game developers is really difficult. So I'm excited about the idea of gamer-backed DAOs in which the community then can participate in different milestones they want to see developed and put funding towards those phases. And
like having your guild on a DAO or something like that will be so cool.
Yeah, and I know the people working on it, like Blockade's looking at it too, and just started experimenting that, because once the more you empower the community to get so that they can get what they want, it's just going to be a more positive experience, maybe less toxicity than what we're used to in normal gaming communities today. But also you're going to be these creative independent devs that are promising, up and coming. They don't want to work for a big studio. They don't want to go get burned out at EA. They want to build something fun and creative. They have this new opportunity to do that and get paid.
Yeah, and I think that not only that financial aspect of distributing resources to the teams that really deserve it, which I think it's one of the biggest use cases for DAOs right now. We are trying to fix the user experience for the DAOs so that users can really take ownership of the global policies of the world. That will be super good to have, but it's a matter of fixing the user experience, making the transactions faster, making it well, the Aragon team has been helping us a lot with this recently, and it's super cool to see it finally like getting to a level where I'm not going to say that I can just give it to my mom and she will know how to use it, but at least with a 1 minute or 2 minute explainer, maybe like someone who doesn't have a technology background, someone who maybe doesn't have like $50 to spend on a decision or something like that. Those are the kinds of frictions that we need to fix so that this becomes globally and generally available, and we can start to take more decisions on the platforms that we use, take more decisions on the governance of our like social or clans or guilds or game strategies and all of that. And I think that's something that really inspires me to help the community grow towards that kind of interaction online.
Great. So one of the questions I have, Decentraland is a little bit different from Blockade or kind of Dapper Labs with Flow in that it's like you're building a world, right? It's this virtual world first and foremost. And so when I think about even stuff happening outside the blockchain space, we look at, Epic with Fortnite and how they're starting to create experiences in Fortnite. And it feels like we're kind of inching towards games leading us into this kind of metaverse vision. And so I guess I'm really curious how you all see that. I mean, Esteban, you guys feel like you're going almost more like directly at that, but you're wedged to pull people into this early metaverse vision is largely gaming, right? You're encouraging gaming experiences to be built in Decentraland. So yeah. How do you see this kind of like merging together of regular life and games in this virtual realm?
Well, there are a number of aspects to that. Like philosophically, I think that it's amazing that like just 70 years ago, Claude Shannon comes up with a theory of information and describes mathematically what is a bit. Nowadays, like every 4-year-old knows what a megabyte in their phones means. And our social systems and our political systems and our everyday life depends more and more on these information systems. And it's something like so new that my grandmother was 20 when the bit was invented. I think that blows my mind. And in games and in the center in particular, I think that the cost of errors, the cost of the community taking a bad turn or a bad decision is a lot slower, and the whole community can learn from that more quickly, and the stakes are slightly lower than if we say we put our whole system on the Ethereum blockchain. So this really allows us to learn about how to make the best use of this technology for our society. And as it starts to become more reliable, more user-friendly, more accessible, and more scalable and cheaper, I think that we'll start to shift away from games and into more real-life information systems that can be backed by a metaverse or a 3D experience like the Decentraland. So it's kind of like philosophical, but I warned you.
Yeah.
So what I like to point to is, these dystopian stories or films or novels. They focus on, some of them focus on like VR and, the new world is going to be digital. Everyone's going to be, in their house, can't go outside, and they have to get into this VR experience. Ready Player One's kind of an example of that. But what the focus is always on, it's the VR, but you cannot have that type of world that these stories promote without the underlying economy, without the underlying ledger. You have to connect the functional aspect of that world that people are living in with the visualization, which is through VR. So that's when these things, if that ever, God forbid, if something like that ever comes to fruition, that's when these things connect like that. But I think over the next 5 years, these things probably connect in more of a fun or gaming environment, right? But to have that fully immersive virtual world experience, you need that economy as well, and you need the underlying infrastructure to make it work, which is the blockchain, obviously.
Yeah, just to add to that, so Blockade doesn't have we don't have a token that's driving our economy. MetaBoss has a reward token that's used kind of like at an arcade counter on OpenSea. But designing for an open economy is actually, it's not that today mainstream games can't do it. It's just that they don't do it because it's a bad idea for a lot of reasons. And so that's not, like, blockchain doesn't really give that solution. So that's still a big problem. So anyways, yeah.
Yeah, it's not only a bad idea, but we've got so little data points. Like, I don't think it's been tried before. At least I'm not sure in games.
Like the Diablo 3 had an open economy and it destroyed. I mean, it made a very toxic community and it destroyed a lot of their assets. There's things that've been done historically that were ended so horribly that no one wanted to do it again. And just the game design, how do you keep injecting value into it? I mean, it needs to be a massive content machine.
Community driven.
Yep. So it's a hard thing to design, and then also to plan out how it should. But I guess Esteban's saying with the like all the potential applications of what they're building and the infrastructure, like I could see that really having legs as far as having this economy.
So one of the questions I have with these interoperable economies is, MetaBoss is a great example of like pulling different NFTs and making them accessible together, but it's like, that's a core mechanic to that game, right? But one of the things that's often talked about is this interoperability. So what do you guys think that's going to look like generally? Like, is interoperability and assets going across games going to become common, or is that going to be more of a niche thing where it's like MetaBoss, where it's like a focus of the core mechanic?
Yeah, this is one of the core eye rolls or pushbacks you get from traditional game developers, that this thing will never exist. And with the way they're thinking about it, I agree with them. You know, you're not going to take your weapons from Counter-Strike and move them into Call of Duty or whatever that might look like. That's just not how these things are designed and are going to operate. The key is in what happened on Facebook. It's like saying that I'm going to take Call of Duty, stick into Facebook, hook in the viral channels, and all will be well, right? No, the game's designed specifically to take advantage of that technology. And the way traditional game developers don't think about this is a new style or type of game that opens up a lot of different opportunities. It's not shoehorning interoperability between games that exist today. It's building a core experience, a core game that leads to things spawning off of it, where you can bring things from that core game or things from the other smart contracts, from the experience that spawn off of it, in and out of all of these experiences, right? So it's a core experience, things built off of it, and that becomes this interoperable universe, not game A built here, game B built here, let's wedge them together. That doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah, to poke an example. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I've had similar conversations with mainstream developers at big heads, and they agree that content, interoperable content, they don't care. What they actually are excited about is, and what they're looking at as a problem that blockchain could solve, is identity, and how you could have a user's account, how their identity could be basically, if they don't have access to or can't control that user's identity, then they're free from all of the liabilities, and then they can share information, that people can have information to this different game companies can share that information without being liable. Does that make sense? So I think sure. So is it 3 blocks that's working? They've got a pretty good handle on that problem, I think, right now.
Yeah, I think we are going to be see with the advent of shift EPR and more conscious usage of data, trying to push your data to be as public as possible, to be so that the companies don't become liable for their data processing and all of that. I think we are going to see the rise of the open data company or something like that. I'm not super sure, but I think that back in the day, all data was free in Facebook. It was opened up. Are you sure, Mike? Maybe you were there, so perhaps
it was. Well, it was. So the developers started to build for that, and then Facebook's like, "Holy crap! This is probably the best idea." So then they started to pull it back, and then eventually pulled it out. So you would have developers that would build a business. They'd have access to all the data. It would cause problems in their mind. They would cut some things off. Developers would have to go back to the drawing board, and eventually they just pulled the whole thing. So yeah, it was completely open at first, and then it closed and closed and closed, and then it was gone.
Yeah, it may have got something to do with Facebook going public or something like that. Maybe you could see a lot of information in there. I'm not quite sure about that. But I think that it was very novel at the time. And I think that we are in the opposite position. Like everything is open by default. And I think that this is something that currently blockchain game companies have that traditional gaming companies are going to be looking for. Like I'm crossing that point with what Margaret says about they wanted to have less liability on data. I think that's another trend to watch in the space.
Yeah, I think, and it's just like one of the things when you said identity also, I think that's a very important piece of this, but there's also the identity in terms of like the skins and different things that are being sold as people like are using this as a form of identity expression. To what extent, is that the way that this kind of backs towards the metaverse, where we start to express our identities through how we present ourselves in these games? Do you see that becoming persistent, or does it remain just a handle and maybe some metadata, or do you think like visually we'll start to present ourselves in some consistent manner across games?
Well, a lot of gamers are also collectors, right? And I think that, to go back to the previous question, I think that about interoperability of items, I think that's if a blockchain would have come like in the 90s or something like that, if the idea was out there and all of a sudden you've got all your items from your games in the 1990s, and that's a huge opportunity to marketing, like bringing your old, I don't know, weapon from Counter-Strike 1.0 or something like that, and I'll trade you in, or we'll give you a free of this other item and things like that. There's a lot of cooperation ideas for marketing in there. And I think that collecting those items kind of like makes for your identity. They're kind of like a badge of who you are, where you were, and what kinds of things did you kept in your wallet over the time.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond collecting. I think humans, whether in gaming or not, like to capture their social capital. Whether you went to the last Nirvana concert in 1998, or whether you got the highest score, or your kill ratio in Call of Duty was like one of the top 5 of all time, or you were the first Justin Bieber fan in the world, and you can prove it by owning this NFT on a blockchain that proves you were the first owner, whatever that might be. It goes back to how do gamers express their identity on the blockchain? I think it's more of a capturing their social capital in real life and in that game, and however that collides and merges into each other. So it's capturing social capital.
Yeah, I think actually that's a viable thing that could be even built today. Like, for example, MetaBoss is reading all your NFTs. But you could have another application that's reading your wallet. It doesn't even have to use smart contracts. It just reads the data and then displays it in a way that's really pretty. Yeah, and then you can share that on your social media. But also, have you heard of Rabbit Hole? It's Brian Flynn's new project, and it captures, like, you go through the gamification of learning, and you unlock NFTs along the way. I think that's really neat. So to work with different projects. So I think there's a lot of people building applications that work with, beyond just the collectability of the NFT, but definitely your badges earned, your stripes for participating.
And so we're coming up on time here, but I want to quickly ask, this has been fascinating. I'm curious, for the other builders out there, right? Because you all have platforms that you're hoping people will build on and will play with the things that get built. What is some new experience or experiment that you'd love to see people try building on these tools and platforms that you're all developing? I know there's a million things, but maybe just each, we've only got a couple minutes, maybe a quick 30 seconds each. What would be something like, hey, try this out?
Sims.
Sims.
Esteban, let's go with you.
I'm a little bit more amazed and delighted with the surprise of the things that people are doing with the decentralized SDK.
Cool. So,
Marguerite?
very open. Yeah.
So have you heard of Eternal? It's a procedural generation dungeon crawler, and there's NFTs you win along the way. It's cool. She's a developer in New York City. I really like her project a lot, and I think the art is sweet. It's 8-bit, so you should look at that.
Something like Sims, a life simulation or a world simulation game with an economy.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for having this conversation. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you all one-on-one and seeing what gets built in your platforms.